Buying a car at auction is a good way to get an old banger for a couple of £100, but there are plenty of super rare cars that have sold for literally millions of pounds at auction. Some cars have been sold privately for more than cars at auction, like a couple of Bugattis and the odd Ferrari. But I'm only including cars sold at auction in this list. Cars you could actually bid on yourself. Well, if you had the money. Oh, and I've limited it to one car per brand, so it isn't just a long list of Ferraris, because that'll just get boring.
Buying a new car? Then head to CarWow and my team will help you find your next car at a fair price. CarWow, your one-stop car buying comparison site.
BMW makes some pretty expensive cars these days. For instance, the M8 costs more than £120,000. But that's nothing compared to how much a classic BMW 507 is worth. One of these became the most expensive BMW ever sold at auction in 2018. It was snapped up for just over £3.8 million. Now that's enough to buy you 30 M8s or 152 brand new BMW 1 Series, if you were wanting a load of 1 Series. Anyway. Rolls-Royce is synonymous with making expensive and luxurious cars. There's the Phantom, the Cullinan, the Ghost and the Wraith, and they're all super quiet, super comfortable and super fast as well. And the same was true over 100 years ago when Rolls-Royce was making things like the Silver Ghost. It only had 50 horsepower, but back in 1912 when the car came out, this was a lot. And one of these models became the most expensive Rolls-Royce ever sold at auction when it fetched £4.7 million back in 2012. Bentley built some pretty blooming lovely cars. The new Flying Spur is just sublime and the Continental GT is one of the best GT cars you can buy. But they're not all about cruising about in comfort. Bentley is one of the few luxury car makers that still actually races its cars. So it's no surprise that the most expensive Bentley ever sold at auction was a racing car. It was a 1929 4.5 litre blower Bentley that set the lap record around the Brooklands racetrack 90 years ago. It sold for a smidge under £5 million in 2012. That's about the same as 32 brand new Continental GTs. The Pagani Zonda originally cost around £250,000, so you wouldn't call it cheap. But there were plenty of people who wanted their Zonda to be a little bit special, and they were happy to pay big bucks to make this happen. This meant Pagani made loads of one-off Zondas for rich petrol heads. One of these was called the Zonda Aether. I think I'm saying it right. Aether. Let me know if I got it right in the comments below. Anyway, it was made in 2017 and was one of the last cars Pagani ever made with a manual gearbox. So it's about as desirable as a Zonda gets. That's why when it was sold at auction in 2019, it fetched £5.3 million. The next car on this list is a Peugeot. Now, who'd have thought that a Peugeot would cost more than a Pagani? But in this case, it actually does. You see, the most expensive Peugeot ever sold at auction was an L45 racing car from 1914. This went for almost £5.6 million back in 2017, and that means you could buy 326 Peugeot 208s for that. You wouldn't, but you could. The Ford GT40 is one of the most famous racing cars ever made. It looks great. It has a huge V8, so it's mega quick as well. And it was designed to give 2 fingers to Ferrari and beat them at Le Mans, which it did. So no wonder they're worth a lot of money these days. In fact, a 1968 model sold for a whopping £6.9 million back in 2012. It seems that 2012 was the year for auctions, wasn't it? Anyway, this car was used as the camera car to shoot the movie Le Mans. And during the filming, the crew actually cut the roof off to give the cameraman more space inside. The most expensive Lamborghini ever sold at auction was a super rare Veneno Roadster. Now, Lamborghini only made 9 of these in 2014, and they cost around £3.8 million each when brand new. Like all super exclusive Lamborghinis, they were sold out before anyone had even seen the car. So the only way to get hold of one is to buy a second-hand one, which you can do at auction. Thing is, when one of these cars was auctioned in 2019, it went for £7 million, so twice the original price. There's profit in that, people. Anyway, if you click on the pop-out banner up there, you can watch me race a Lamborghini Urus against an Aventador SV and a Huracan Performante in a Lamborghini wide drag race. Go check it out. What do you reckon is the most expensive Bugatti ever sold at auction? Is it a Chiron? Maybe some super limited edition Veyron? No, it's actually an old Type 59 sports racing car from 1934. Specifically, it was the one that was owned by the King of Belgium. It sold for more than £9.5 million this year. That's enough to buy you 3 brand new Chirons. Now if you click on the pop-out banner just up there, the top right hand corner of the screen, you can watch my world exclusive video where I go in the new Chiron Super Sport 300. Very exciting. You've already seen that the camera car from the movie Le Mans sold for almost £7 million, so how much do you reckon the car that actually starred in that film is worth? Well, it's actually a 1970 Porsche 917K, and it was driven by the Steve McQueen, so obviously it's not going to be cheap. It was sold at auction in 2018 for a record £10.9 million. That's the most anyone's ever paid for a Porsche at auction. The last 8-seater Alfa Romeo built was a pretty cool car. It looked great and had a V8 engine that sounded fabulous. These cars are worth a fair bit now, between about £200,000 and £300,000. That sounds like a lot, but it's nothing compared with the 1939 8C 2900B. Very few of these old 8Cs were ever made, and even fewer with gorgeous drop-top bodywork. If you want one, you'll have to fork out some serious cash. One sold for more than £15.1 million back in 2016. The McLaren F1 is one of the most famous and most valuable cars in the world, partly because it set a top speed record of 240 miles an hour back in the 90s, and partly because McLaren only built 64 road cars, and only 2 of these were fitted with the ultra-rare LM package back in 1994. They got a de-restricted engine from racing cars and a whole load of extra aero bits, so it makes sense that they'll be pretty valuable these days. Well, one of those F1s sold at auction in 2019 for £16.3 million. You've probably heard of the Jaguar F-Type Project 7, right? The F-Type with no roof and a big fin behind the driver. Well, that car was inspired by a classic Jaguar racing car called the D-Type from 1955. It was one of the most successful racing cars of the 50s, and it gave Jaguar 3 wins at Le Mans. One of these D-Types went up for auction in 2016, and it sold for almost £16.7 million. With that much cash, you could have bought 128 Project 7s. And while we're talking about Jaguars, click on the pop-out banner up there to watch me drag race a Project 8 against a Mercedes-AMG E63 S Estate. The most expensive Aston Martin ever sold at auction has got to be one of James Bond's cars, right? Well, the most expensive Bond car ever sold was the Aston DB5 from Goldfinger, and it went for £4.9 million in 2019. But actually, the most expensive Aston Martin ever sold at auction cost more than triple that. It's an Aston DB-R1 from 1956. It was the first one Aston ever built, and they only made 5. It was also driven by one of the most famous British racing drivers, Sir Stirling Moss. So no wonder it sold for £17.4 million in 2017. Mercedes absolutely dominates Formula 1 at the moment, but this isn't the first time it's gone racing. It built some seriously fast Grand Prix cars back in the 50s. The most famous and most successful one was called the W196 from 1954. It was driven by all sorts of famous drivers and won every single world championship it ever entered. No wonder it's pretty desirable then. In fact, someone wanted one so much that they paid £19.6 million for one in 2013. Now, if you click on the pop-out banner up there, you can watch me launch some super rare and super expensive Mercedes-Benz classic cars from 0 to 60 miles an hour. I can't even believe they let me do it. One of the cars was worth £20 million. I mentioned Ferraris at the beginning of this video, and here's why. If you take the 50 most expensive cars ever sold at auction from any brand, 28 of them would be Ferraris. That is insane, really. The most expensive Ferrari ever sold at auction was a 1962 250 GTO. Ferrari only made 3060 of these, and only 4 got fitted with special aerodynamic bodywork. This means it's one of the rarest cars in the world. But the amount someone paid for it is still completely insane. Now, before I tell you exactly how much it is, in the pinned comment from carwow below the video, we've given you 3 choices. Click like on the choice you think is correct. Have you done that? I'm waiting. I'm going to reveal just how much this car went for. Someone paid £37.7 million for this 250 GTO in 2018. It's completely bonkers, isn't it? I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, you can click there to watch some more videos. Also, if you just click there, you can download access to the CarWow newsletter. So in between our videos, we'll be updating our website with various news stories on new exciting cars. So if you click that link, you can go to our website and sign up for that newsletter so you can be informed of all the latest and greatest cars, the stuff that we cover in addition to these videos.